We all are given the same gift every single day, 24 hours. No one gets more, no one gets less. But somehow, some people turn these hours into a life that shines, and others feel like the day just slips through their fingers like sand. The difference is not time. The difference is how we use it. Life doesn't ask you to be perfect with your time. It only asks you to be intentional. Because every hour you waste is not just time gone. It is a piece of your future that never arrives. The way you begin your morning is not just a routine, it is a silent agreement with your life about how the rest of the day will treat you. When you open your eyes, before the world starts asking things from you, there is a very fragile moment where your mind is still soft, still clean, still not controlled by chaos. In that moment, if you allow pressure to enter first, everything after that becomes a race you never signed up for. But if you allow purpose to enter first, even the busiest day starts to feel like something you are leading, instead of something you are surviving. Most people don't realize how quickly their thoughts get hijacked. One notification, one memory of unfinished work, one comparison with someone else's life, and suddenly the day is no longer theirs. It belongs to stress. It belongs to expectations. It belongs to everything except the person living it. Purpose is not something big or dramatic that you wait for. It is something you decide quietly, almost softly, before the noise begins. It can be as simple as deciding that today you will not rush your emotions. Today you will not speak harshly to yourself. Today you will finish one thing with full attention instead of starting 10 things with scattered energy. The moment you set even a small intention like this, your mind starts to gather itself. It stops running in every direction. It starts to stand still in one direction. And that stillness is powerful, because a calm mind does not waste energy fighting invisible battles all day long. Pressure, on the other hand, does something very different. It makes you feel like you are already behind before the day has even started. It whispers that you are late, that you are not doing enough, that you are always catching up to something that keeps moving further away. And when a person starts their morning with that voice, they don't live the day, they chase it. They wake up tired without even doing anything meaningful yet. That kind of exhaustion is not physical. It is emotional clutter building up before life even properly begins. There is also something deeply healing about slowing down the first few minutes of your day. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become clearer. Clarity changes everything. When you are clear, you don't waste your energy on things that don't matter. You stop reacting to every small distraction. You stop letting every opinion shape your mood. You start choosing what deserves your attention instead of giving your attention away unconsciously. And attention, once controlled, becomes direction. Direction slowly becomes discipline. Discipline quietly turns into transformation. People often wait for motivation to feel ready. But motivation is not reliable. It comes and goes like weather. What stays is the decision you make when you are not feeling anything special. When you are just ordinary. When you are just you in a quiet morning, trying to figure out how to face the world again. That is where real strength begins, not in loud moments, but in silent choices. Choosing purpose over pressure is one of those silent choices that no one applauds, but everything in your life responds to it. Even your body responds differently when your morning is grounded in intention. Your breathing becomes slower, your thoughts become less aggressive, your reactions become more thoughtful. You stop treating the day like an enemy and start treating it like a space you are allowed to move through. And slowly, without forcing anything, you begin to notice that not everything deserves your urgency. Not everything deserves your panic. Not everything deserves your immediate reaction. There is a kind of freedom in realizing that you don't have to fix your entire life before noon. You don't have to carry the weight of every responsibility in the first hour of your day. You are allowed to begin gently, to begin with awareness, to begin with a sense of direction instead of desperation. And when that becomes your way of starting, even ordinary days start to feel like they belong to you again. A time is the only currency that every human being receives equally. Yet it is also the only currency people spend without thinking. You wake up each day holding something more valuable than money, more powerful than opportunity, more fragile than promises, and still it slips away in places you never planned. It does not shout when it leaves. It does not warn you before it disappears. It simply moves forward and never looks back. And while life keeps asking you to become something meaningful, your time quietly decides whether you will or you won't. Protecting your time is not about building walls around your life. It is about learning the difference between what fills you and what drains you. There are moments, people, habits, and distractions that look harmless on the surface, but slowly take away your focus, your energy, your direction. You don't always notice it happening because it doesn't feel like loss in the beginning. It feels like just 5 minutes on your phone, just one unnecessary conversation, just a little delay in starting something important. But those little pieces of time don't stay little. They multiply silently, and suddenly you are left wondering where your entire day went without ever feeling present in it. There is a strange comfort in distraction. It gives you the illusion of rest while actually keeping your mind restless. You think you are relaxing when you scroll endlessly, but your thoughts are not resting. They are jumping from one image to another, one story to another, one comparison to another. And the more you feed this pattern, the harder it becomes to sit still with your own thoughts. Protecting your time means protecting your attention, because where your attention goes, your life quietly follows without permission. Not everything that asks for your time deserves it. Some things only ask because they can. And if you never learn to pause before saying yes, you start living a life shaped by other people's urgency instead of your own intention. There is a silent strength in saying no without explanation. No to conversations that drain your peace. No to habits that steal your focus. No to commitments that do not align with the direction you are trying to grow into. Every no becomes a yes to something more important, even if that importance is simply your own mental space. Time also gets wasted in the mind long before it gets wasted in reality. Overthinking is one of the quietest thieves of time. You replay situations that cannot be changed. You imagine conversations that never happened. You prepare for outcomes that may never arrive. Hours pass while the body remains still, but the mind runs miles. Protecting your time also means protecting your thoughts, not allowing them to become a place where energy is lost without action. A clear mind doesn't carry unnecessary stories. It carries direction, even if that direction is simple and small. There is also something powerful about understanding that urgency is not the same as importance. The world will always try to make you feel like everything needs to be done immediately. But not everything urgent is meaningful. Some things can wait without breaking your future. Some things can be delayed without destroying your progress. But when you confuse urgency with importance, you start building a life of reaction instead of creation. You respond to everything, but you design nothing. When you begin to treat your time as something sacred, your choices start to change naturally. You stop giving hours to things that don't align with your growth. You start noticing how quickly energy shifts when you move away from noise and toward clarity. Even your relationships begin to reflect this awareness because you no longer engage from emptiness, you engage from intention. And intention changes the quality of every interaction, every decision, every moment that used to feel ordinary, but now feels more conscious, more chosen. There is also a quiet realization that comes when you stop chasing everything at once. You start seeing that time is not just about productivity, it is also about presence. Being present in a moment means you are not mentally living somewhere else while your body is here. It means you are not constantly escaping your own life while it is happening. And presence slowly becomes a form of power because it allows you to experience life instead of just rushing through it. Even rest becomes more meaningful when time is respected. Rest is not the absence of productivity, it is the restoration of clarity. But most people don't truly rest. They just switch from one distraction to another. Real rest requires stillness, and stillness feels uncomfortable to a mind that is used to constant stimulation. Yet that discomfort is exactly where healing begins, where awareness returns, where control over your own hours starts to rebuild itself quietly again. Growth is not something that arrives in loud moments or dramatic changes. It is something that quietly builds itself inside the smallest choices you make when no one is watching. People often imagine transformation as a sudden shift, as if one day you wake up and everything about you is different. But real life does not change in that way. Real life changes in repetition, in consistency, in the small decisions that feel almost invisible at the time, but slowly start shaping who you become. Working on yourself every day does not require perfection, it requires presence. It requires showing up for yourself even when you do not feel motivated, even when the progress feels too slow to notice. Even when your mind tells you that nothing is changing. Most people underestimate the power of small actions because they are looking for big results. They want visible success, instant improvement, immediate validation. But growth does not work on urgency, it works on accumulation. One page read today does not change your life, but reading one page every day changes your thinking. One small improvement in your behavior does not redefine your identity, but repeating that improvement slowly replaces old patterns with new ones. And without realizing it, you become someone different not because of one moment, but because of hundreds of unnoticed efforts stacking on top of each other. There is a quiet discipline in deciding to improve yourself in ordinary moments. It is choosing to reflect instead of react, choosing to pause instead of rush, choosing to learn instead of ignore. Even something as simple as noticing your own mistakes without harsh judgment is a form of growth. Because most people either avoid their flaws or punish themselves for them. But very few people observe themselves with honesty and kindness at the same time. That kind of awareness is where real change begins. Because you cannot improve what you refuse to see clearly. Work is not always about adding something new. Sometimes it is about removing what is unnecessary. Old habits that no longer serve your direction, thoughts that repeat fear instead of clarity, comparisons that quietly weaken your confidence. Letting go is also a form of building. When you release what weighs you down, you create space for something lighter to enter. But letting go is not easy because familiarity often feels safer than growth. Even when something is hurting you, it can still feel comfortable simply because it is known. And breaking that comfort requires patience with yourself, not force. There is also something deeply powerful about learning in silence. Not everything you learn needs to be announced. Not every improvement needs to be shared. Some growth is meant to stay private until it becomes strong enough to stand on its own. When you are constantly seeking approval, your focus shifts from becoming better to appearing better. And that shift slowly weakens your foundation. Real progress happens when you are no longer performing for validation, but quietly building yourself, even when no one notices the effort. Working on yourself every day also means accepting that some days will feel unproductive. Some days will feel emotionally heavy. Some days will feel like you are going backwards. But even those days are part of the process. Growth is not a straight line. It bends, it pauses, it sometimes feels like nothing is happening at all. But underneath that stillness, something is always shifting. Your patience is being tested, your discipline is being shaped. Your understanding of yourself is becoming deeper, even when it does not feel obvious. There is a different kind of strength in continuing without applause. When no one is clapping, when no one is noticing, when no one is reminding you to keep going, and yet you still choose to take one more step toward becoming better than yesterday. That choice, repeated over time, builds a version of you that does not depend on external motivation to move forward. It builds internal direction, something that stays steady even when everything outside feels uncertain, and slowly, without realizing it, your identity begins to shift. You stop being someone who tries to change and start becoming someone who naturally grows. Your thinking becomes more aware. Your reactions become more thoughtful. Your habits become more intentional. You start recognizing patterns in yourself that you could not see before. And instead of judging them, you begin working with them, shaping them, understanding them from a place that feels less like pressure and more like awareness. Even your understanding of time begins to change. You stop waiting for the right moment to improve, because you realize that the right moment is always the one you are currently in. There is no perfect starting point, only consistent continuation. And that realization slowly removes the illusion that change is somewhere in the future, because change is always happening in the present. In the small decisions you make while living through ordinary hours that feel insignificant, but are quietly shaping everything that comes next. The way you end your day is just as important as the way you begin it, because between morning intention and night reflection lies the reality of everything you have lived, chosen, ignored, or faced. Most people fall into sleep, carrying the weight of what went wrong, replaying conversations, regretting actions, questioning decisions, building stories in their mind that have no resolution except more stress. And in that space, peace becomes the first thing they lose at night and the last thing they find in the morning. But your night is not meant to be a courtroom where you judge yourself endlessly. It is meant to be a space where your mind learns to soften, release, and quietly close the chapters of the day without turning them into burdens for tomorrow. Gratitude is not about ignoring what is difficult. It is about refusing to let difficulty become the only story you believe. When you look at your day, there will always be something that did not go according to plan. Something you said differently, something you should have done, something that did not meet your expectations. But there is also something that survived, something that worked. something that moved forward even slightly. And most people overlook these small moments because their attention is trained to focus on what is missing rather than what is present. Yet life is not only built from success, it is also built from the quiet moments where nothing fell apart despite everything feeling uncertain. When you choose to end your day with even a small sense of gratitude, you are not pretending that everything is perfect. You are simply refusing to let imperfection define the entire day. You are acknowledging that even within struggle, there were moments that carried meaning, even if they were small or unnoticed. A conversation that made you feel slightly understood, a task you completed even when you felt tired, a moment where you handled something better than you would have in the past. These are not insignificant details. They are signs that something inside you is still moving forward. Regret, when left unchecked, becomes a loop that steals your rest. The mind keeps revisiting the same moment, trying to rewrite what cannot be changed. It creates versions of the past that no longer exist except in thought. And the more you feed it, the more it grows. But gratitude interrupts that loop. It does not erase what happened, but it shifts your attention to what also happened. It creates balance in a mind that naturally leans toward criticism. And that balance is what allows rest to feel like rest. Instead of a continuation of unfinished emotional work, there is also something deeply healing about recognizing your effort instead of only measuring your outcome. Most people judge their day by productivity, by how much they achieved, how much they completed, how much they checked off their list. But effort carries a different truth. There are days when showing up itself is the achievement. Days when simply not giving up on yourself is the progress. And when you learn to see that, your relationship with your own life becomes softer, less demanding, more understanding. Ending your day with gratitude also changes the way your mind prepares for tomorrow. Instead of entering sleep with tension, you enter it with acceptance. And acceptance does not mean giving up on improvement. It means releasing the pressure of needing everything to be fixed immediately. It allows your mind to reset instead of carrying yesterday's weight into a new beginning. Sleep becomes deeper, thoughts become quieter, and the next morning does not feel like a continuation of stress, but a new opportunity to begin again with less emotional clutter. There is also a quiet strength in learning to forgive yourself at night, not because everything you did was right, but because holding on to self-blame does not create improvement, it only creates exhaustion. Forgiveness allows you to acknowledge your mistakes without becoming them. It allows you to see that you are still in progress, still learning, still adjusting. And when you stop treating yourself like someone who must already be perfect, you begin to grow in a way that feels less forced and more natural. Even your perception of the day changes when you practice gratitude before sleep. The mind slowly starts searching for meaning instead of only searching for mistakes. It begins to notice patterns of resilience instead of only patterns of failure. And over time, this subtle shift changes how you experience life itself, because what you focus on at the end of the day becomes the lens through which your mind remembers everything that came before it.